7 o'clock. All right, 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started with the City Council Caucus meeting tonight. Our first on the agenda is our audit report. I will introduce John Chamberlain. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Again, my name is John Chamberlain. I'm a CPA and partner at Chamberlain, Owen & Company, CPAs here in Erlanger, and we are professional certified public accountants who specialize in governmental accounting and auditing. And we appreciate the opportunity to do the work again this year for the city of Erlanger. I notice there's a lot of new faces on the board, and I look forward to meeting all of you throughout the years as we do the audit here. I'd be remiss if I didn't start off by thanking Kara Kramer. Kara is your finance director, and a little bit of bragging here on the city of Erlanger. I think there are 3 finance directors in Northern Kentucky who produce a consolidated annual financial report like you have here by themselves. In other words, their auditor doesn't produce their report; they do it themselves. The city of Florence, the city of Crestview Hills, and the city of Erlanger. So so Kara is one of the 3 that does that here in Northern Kentucky. So yeah, how about that, huh? So that's a big accomplishment. It's a very complicated set of financial statements to put together, and so I can't brag on her enough for the work that she's done in putting these together. Now, I have a slide presentation. You all have copies of the financial statements. The mayor wanted me to read all 96 pages of the financial statements word for word, but instead I'm just going to do a little bit of a summary in the slide presentation and call it a night since there's a Kentucky game on. The second slide is where do I point this thing? Anyone? Bueller? Somebody advance it for me. One right there. All right, one of us got it. All right, the second slide is the auditor's opinion, and that's what we get paid for, is to provide an opinion on the financial statements. And our opinion is that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects, and they show the respective financial position of the city of Erlanger as of June 30th, 2021, in accordance with accounting procedures generally accepted in the United States. This is what's called an unmodified opinion, meaning no modifications are required to be made to the opinion, and that's the highest opinion that we give. You can go on to the next one, please. There we go. As a part of every governmental audit, we do a review of the city's internal controls, and that's your segregation of your cash controls, your financial controls, and to make sure the duties are appropriately segregated to reduce the risk as much as possible. And we noted no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the city's internal controls, and that's a very good thing. That's one thing that you want as a city. As a part of every governmental audit, we also review compliance with the Kentucky Revised Statutes, your county employee retirement system compliance, any grants, bonds, grant agreements, anything like that, and I have no issues of non-compliance to report. Now, because the city did receive and expend more than $750,000 in federal funds to CFR 200, which is United States Code, it's called the Uniform Guidance. We're required to do procedures on the expenditure of those federal funds. And so we also look at non-compliance or compliance with federal programs and internal control over the expenditure of federal funds. And so we had no issues of non-compliance with the federal programs tested under the Uniform Guidance, and no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control over the expenditure of federal funds. I think you're just going to have to drive. There you go. So we also provide to council a letter. It's called a letter to those in charge of governance, and it's our communication directly to you as a council. And this letter is slightly boilerplate this year. It lists a lot of things, but basically, we had no unplanned audit adjustments. That means we didn't make any audit adjustments that we weren't expecting to make. We do have one planned audit adjustment annually to adjust your pension and OPEB liabilities, and we had to adjust that annually, and added about $2.3 million to pensions and $691,000 in Opeb expenses. Now, those are actuarial expenses that are in your financial statements. Also, every year you submit your annual consolidated financial report to the Government Finance Officers Association. So in 2020, you got an Achievement for Excellence Award for financial reporting from the GFOA, and we expect that the 2020 report that we'll be submitting here in the next couple of weeks to receive the same award. We did issue a management letter with one management comment. This is your assets, unrestricted cash, and investment position for your governmental funds. Total cash and investments have been relatively level over the last 5 years. Cash is about $1.6 million more than in 2020. You see the cash value at almost $11.3 million compared to $9.7 in the prior year, while investments grew about $300,000 over 2020. I just want to point out, I think it was a comment of ours a couple of years ago to start an investment account, and your investments have increased 10% over that 5-year period. So it's a pretty good return on those investments. A rule of thumb in cash accounts for governmental accounting is to have about 1/4 of your annual operating expenses. So that's about $4.9 million in cash on hand. You have about $11.3 million in cash unrestricted and $4.6 million in unrestricted investments on hand. So you have about 10 months worth of cash on hand. So a very good cash position for the city. The next slide is your liabilities. The yellow liabilities are your current fund liabilities. Those are the ones that were current and payable in the first few months of the fiscal year. That was about $1.6 million, very similar to last year. The orange is the current portion of your long-term debt. Yeah, there is an orange one there somewhere. It's the current portion of your long-term debt and your compensated absences. The total is about $150,000. And then the red is any long-term debt. That's the compensated absences for the city employees, as well as a small amount of debt that the city still has. You've got about $155,000 remaining on your long-term debt. You should have that paid off in fiscal year 2023. The purple bar is your pension and Opeb accrued liabilities, and you see they're topping $36 million. And again, that's not something that the city's going to get an invoice for next week, but the County Employee Retirement System claws that back annually and monthly through higher rates for your city employees' pensions. So as you budget, your pension expenditures continue to be one of your larger expenditures, one of your more rapidly increasing expenditures. The next slide is a revenues versus expenditures for all funds for the past 5 years. 2021 had an excess of revenues over expenditures of about $1.1 million gain compared to about a $1 million gain in the previous year. Federal revenues of $572,000 in 2021 and $1.2 million in 2020 make up or contributed to that excess pretty significantly. Both revenues and expenditures increased right at 7%. The city has a self-imposed fund balance target of about 30% and 30% of expenditures. So you want a fund balance that's at least 30% of your expenditures. That would require a fund balance of approximately $6.2 million this year. The city's fund balance is $18 million, which is about 87% of expenditures. So outstanding financial position. Revenues by source is the next slide. Total revenues for the city and all your governmental funds of $20.8 million, again about a 7% increase. Licenses and permits right at $13.2 million, I think about a 15% increase over the prior year. Taxes holding steady at $4.7, about a 3.5% increase. Intergovernmental revenue, $1.6 million, 22% decrease. And that decrease really is shown just really because of the difference in the federal revenue from last year of $1.2 million and $574,000 this year. So slight difference in those two federal programs. And then charges for services up at $705,000, up about 12%. The next slide is expenditures by department for all of your governmental funds. So total expenditures of $19.7 million, again about a 7% increase in expenditures. Police expenditures of $5.8 million, about 2.7% increase. Fire and EMS, $4.7 million. Anybody see my color code yet? Fire and EMS, $4.7 million increase, about 6.1% increase over the prior year. General government, about a 3% increase in that, or I'm sorry, at $3 million, about a 36% increase. The vast majority of that increase is all in your TIF fund, what you've collected for the TIF, and then what you disperse out of the TIF. So that's a self-balancing in and out of the TIF fund. So that's what's making that increase. The capital outlay of $2.6 million, again about a 15% increase there, and then public works of $2.6 million, slight decrease there. The next slide, this is going to be a little hard to see. Can you expand that just a little bit? We don't need the top at all, I mean, so. Okay, that's a little better. There you go, that's perfect, that's good. All right, thank you. So this is a 5-column slide. It's broken down between the first column is your original budget of your general fund. The second column are all of the amendments that you made to your general fund. And then the final column is the third column over is your final budgeted amounts for the general fund. The fourth column over are your actual revenues and actual expenditures. And then the fifth column over is a variance column. So if you have a positive variance, it means you received more than you budgeted or you expended less than you budgeted. So a positive number in that fifth column is always a good number. And so as you can see there, you had amounts appropriated, available for appropriation budgeted right at $31 million. So that's right at the middle of the page under final amounts available for appropriation, right at $31 million. You actually had $32 million come in, so you had about a $1.8 million positive variance even over what you budgeted there at the end of the year. Your charges to appropriations, your expenditures, so you plan to expend about $17.4 million, and you expended right at that $5,000 variance. You were right on with your final budget numbers there. So very good management to budget. You're obviously not expending any funds that you're not budgeting. Good job there. The next slide is the same slide for your capital expenditure fund. Maybe. Yeah, that one, yeah. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, that'll work. So you see there, you had budgeted about $4 million, set up the same way, original budget amendments, final budget, and then actual amounts and then a variance. You had budgeted to amounts available to expend. So this is the amount that you had available total to expend of $4.3 million. You expended you received $5.1 million, so $800,000 positive variance in revenues received. And then you had budgeted to expend $2.7 million, and you expended right at that number in expenditures in your capital improvement fund. Okay. You do have the financial statements. Kara has provided them to you. I think that's the last slide. There's a question slide. But, you do have the financial statements. Kara should have provided the governance letter as well. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain those now.
I think you have explained it perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
All right. Well, the test is later, so I'll be handing that out, so I hope you pay attention.
Thank you so much
All right.
for
Thank you
being
very
with
much.
us.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. All right. Next on the agenda is body-worn camera bid results. Sergeant Day.
I'll say a couple things real quick, just because this is the first time we've utilized the new procedure that we added for leases. The reason that the police department is bringing this to council's attention, this is a multi-year lease, which will indebt the city longer than the current budget. Due to that, we are going to ask for a municipal order to approve their decision if council agrees in December. So that's the reason they're briefing it tonight.
Good evening, everybody. So what kind of brought this to light was our body-worn cameras are reaching the end of their service life. In today's society, you guys, I'm sure, know how important it is to maintain body-worn cameras so that the footage is always there when you need it. I tasked our lieutenants, Lieutenant Nezzi, Lieutenant Ashley, and Sergeant Cameron Day to kind of start looking into body-worn cameras and see what it is that everybody else is doing out there, what works, what doesn't work. Erlanger has been doing body-worn cameras before that was even the hot topic. We've been doing them since 2008. So I think we know a thing or two about the programs, what's needed, what's not. And I want to introduce Cameron Day. Cameron, come up, give your presentation. These guys have put a boatload of work into this, and I'm sure if you guys have questions, feel free to ask. We can give you an answer or make it up, whatever you guys prefer. So
we'll find an answer for you, I promise. Thanks, Chief. So I've been involved with the body-worn camera system here since 2017. Thank you so much. Thank you. And then I actually took it over in 2019. Like Chief said, we've had body cameras here much longer than other agencies, and we're very proud of that, and we want to keep that going. So, most importantly, why do we need body cameras? And there's a lot of reasons for this, and there's a lot of important reasons too. We want to continue to promote accountability, transparency, and legitimacy with our community. There is nothing better than a community member coming in and saying, well, this happened, this happened, this happened, and we're able to say, wait a second, we've got film. Let's sit down, let's talk about this, let's look at the film. What comes along with that too is a lot of legal litigation. Again, that body camera, this color, it's right there, everybody can watch it, and we can either prove or disprove what happened. I'm sure everyone understands with what's going on in society right now, body cameras are getting more and more and more important, and that comes with prosecution too. When we go to court, unfortunately, one of the biggest questions is, do you have body cam? I hate that it's came to that, but unfortunately it has. So it's very important for that too. Lastly, it's a great training tool for current officers and incoming recruits. There's nothing better than, after a huge event, sitting down with a group of guys and going over that film and saying, what can we get better at? Or what did we do great, so we can commend officers for a good job. With new recruits, when I'm able to go over a policy or procedure and then say, now let's watch this film where this officer did a great job with that, or we could have done it better, again, it's a good tool to have. So we did a testing and evaluation for our body cams. We understand this is a huge expense for our city, and we want to get the right fit for us and for our community. What we did collectively, myself, Lieutenant Nezzi, Lieutenant Ashley, We tested and evaluated 3 different body cameras. We used 11 officers, 2 patrol sergeants. Both of our traffic units use them. The reason for that is they have a lot of contacts, so they record a lot of film. I also reached out to our county and our Commonwealth Attorney's Office. The reason being is they're the ones who are using a lot of the film in court, so they see it a lot. They're a good entity to know this camera works or this camera doesn't work. After each officer used a body camera, I sent them a survey to get their feedback to see what was good, what was bad, what was the pros, what was the cons, what's going to work best for us as a city. So the bid process is complete. We're asking for council to approve Axon. We believe that this would be the greatest benefit for the city. I'll just go over a couple of these bullet points. The 2 main things that I think are most important is Axon has a gun holster activation and a taser activation. So what that means, let's say it's the middle of the night, an officer sees somebody running from a scene of a shoplifting or a shots fired. It's exigent, they're getting out of their car, they're going as quick as they can. They don't, and let's say they pull their taser out. The circumstances dictate a show of force. That officer does not have to figure out, oh, where's my body cam? I got to turn that on. When they draw that taser out, that camera automatically turns on. So that officer no longer has to worry about where's that body cam in the middle of the night trying to turn it on. With that being said as well, any officer within 30 feet of that officer, their camera is going to turn on too. So you're getting that 360-degree approach from a situation that maybe there's not time to turn that camera on. It happens, unfortunately. One other really good thing about Axon that I think is going to benefit the officers in the city as well is they provide an application on the phone where guys in the field can tag their videos. They can record audio from their phone, they can record video from their phone, and it gives the capability of, if a citizen has a photo or a video of something that's happened, we can shoot them a hyperlink and they can upload that in the field. So we're not missing out on maybe evidence from the citizens that we couldn't get before, or it takes a lot longer to get. Let's keep going here. So this is always the big question, the cost of Axon. The annual cost comes out to a little over $48,000 a year, and I just broke it down a little bit more for you. Like City Administrator Kramer said, it is a 5-year commitment, and that's why we're coming to you all, because we want to make sure this is something that you all support, and we believe it's the right fit for us. We did receive many other bids. Axon came in probably middle high. However, the capabilities that they were able to provide, not all these other vendors were able to provide. So, and the taser and the gun thing is huge for us, and we think that's important to make sure we capture everything we need to capture if things go bad. So, does anybody have any questions? Exciting.
My question is, okay, it's a 5-year commitment. Are they able to raise the price along the 5 years, or does it stay the same? And do they do updates? Because I can see where updates would be real important.
Great question. So we're locked in for 5 years. They cannot raise that price. With Axon, I'm glad you brought this up because it's another great point. They're going to do 3 camera refreshes. So there's a couple reasons for that. One, the batteries do wear out. It's just like a cell phone. You know, the battery wears out. 2, if new technology comes out, we're going to get that new technology. So we're not going to be stuck with the same camera. Let's say they come out with a way better camera, we're upgrading to that. It's all included. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Reckers?
So we don't own the equipment, it's leased, and then if new equipment comes out, then it refreshes the department. So at the end of the 5-year term, do we own the equipment?
We do own the equipment, yes, ma'am. However, like before, if they come out with new equipment, we're going to get that new equipment.
Okay.
3 different refreshes. So.
And what is the useful life of these cameras?
It's typically the battery is what wears out, so it's not the camera itself. But we don't have to worry about that because that refresh is built in 3 different times. Does that make sense?
It does, but so within that 5-year period, right?
Correct.
But there's a chance it could, they could work beyond that 5-year period, or would we revisit?
When we get to that 5-year mark, we'll have to evaluate.
And you,
I'm hoping they would obviously last longer.
you said it works in conjunction with our tasers that we have. Is
Yes.
it the tasers that we just purchased, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So-
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to make sure everything is compatible, since this is a sizable expense.
Exactly. So the thing about the taser is their taser is specific to their body cam. So no other body cam, if we did go with a different body cam, would activate with the taser because it's the same brand. Yes, we have it, and it's already installed. We don't have to pay any more for that.
Do you happen to know the useful life of the tasers that we just purchased? Like when they start to fail, is that going to be around the same time? Are we looking at
So 5 years for the tasers.
Yeah, it's the same,
life cycle?
yeah, we started the contract with Taser in last budget year, so these will be about the same time.
Right.
And to kind of further answer one of your questions about the Taser, on one of the other bids that we received, that company does offer a service that when you take your firearm or your Taser out of the holster, it comes on. However, their caveat is, with your Taser, we have to come in and physically put something on the holster, and then that voids the Taser warranty. So it's not really compatible because we just bought these brand new Tasers. We don't want to void the warranty with a RFID chip that they want to glue to our Taser. So.
Whereas that warranty wouldn't be voided, obviously, because it's the same.
Correct, because it's already
Right.
built into this Taser.
Ms. Jasper Lucas?
Thank you. Just a couple questions, and I just I don't know what the amount is right now. How much are we spending now?
It's like 24,000 is what we're spending about right now. However, with that, it doesn't include any camera upgrades. So if we were to upgrade our cameras like we're going to do with Axon, we would be spending about $34,000 a year.
How, in the past, how often have we leased these before, or we've always purchased?
We purchased the cameras outright, that's correct.
Okay. So now that we're leasing, we're not locked into basically outdated equipment.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And the problem we're having now is that we've had these cameras for about 2.5 years. The batteries are going bad. The lenses are breaking. And every time this happens, I'm having to ship it out. We're paying that extra cost. It's accumulating quickly.
So I know you said that maintenance is really important, obviously. So like, for instance, if a lens gets broken on one of these, do they repair that? Is that included?
Everything's included. So, great question. We've had some officers go on, thank you. We've had some officers go on foot pursuits, or our canine officers have gotten down in the trenches with their dogs. They've lost the cameras. They've gotten tussles and broken them, and that's added up for us. So going with this new company is going to eliminate that cost that's accumulating quickly.
So ultimately now, we might be spending a one-time expense of whatever the amount was that you said, but we're also spending maintenance cost that's not included in that one-time expense. Okay.
Exactly.
And then can you go back to the bids page? I just want to know, okay, obviously the Motorola was super cheap. What does it not do that these do? Same question for the most expensive one. Does it do anything that this one doesn't do?
That's a great question. That's why I made a graph for you. My little cheat sheet. So when we're talking about Motorola, let me look at my little cheat sheet here. Obviously, they don't have the Taser activation. That won't be included. They don't have a pre-event capture, and what that means is if I had an Axon camera and I hit my record button, it would go back 30 seconds. With Motorola, they don't have that. Motorola did not have the refresh, so you're not getting 3 new cameras. So that expense isn't in that bid, if that makes sense. They didn't have a cell phone application. There's just 4 or 5 more things that just aren't there that I think would greatly benefit the officers in the city.
What about the most expensive one? Does it do, I'm looking at it and thinking, I look at things in terms of cars. Like, what's the Cadillac do that the Toyota doesn't?
Well, it's funny because when I talk to some of these vendors, because they're like, "Oh, who are you going with? Who are you competing with?" And I always bring up Axon. And they say, "Well, Axon's the Cadillac. That's the Mercedes." So, but if we're talking about Coben, which I didn't even know who they were, so I was very surprised to see that bid. They didn't even have the holster activation. They didn't have the taser activation. They didn't have a no-fault warranty. So that bid was a little high, and I didn't understand why.
Is there anything any of the others do that this one doesn't do that you wish it did?
No, not really. I wish there was. I wish there was something else I could think of, but I'm sure in 5 years they'll figure it out. And
No, I'm glad you can't think of anything else. I'm glad that
Yeah.
the one you want does everything.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
So we're looking to purchase 11, is that correct? From your
40. It'll be 40 body cameras.
40 body cameras.
Yeah.
I didn't see that on there. Maybe it did, my apologies. So how many do we currently have?
40 as well.
So 40. So
Yeah.
it would be the same amount, and then these would be refreshed 3 times during the lease period.
Yes, ma'am. And Axon actually gives you 1 spare, too. So if something were to happen, you've got 1 in reserve, and they'll ship them overnight and get you it back.
Okay. Thank you.
Diana?
Thank you for the presentation. I thought it was amazing for explaining it to us. Are there any grants that will be applied for to help with the cost, or is that something you apply for grants to cover the cost of any of these?
I'm glad you brought that up. So when this process, we were just starting to test and evaluate, there was a federal grant that came out. However, the deadline for that was so quick, I didn't feel comfortable applying for it because I didn't know what would fit for our city yet. However, in the years to come, it could be another possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Doan?
Could you go back to the features page that you had? My questions revolve around retention of, record retention. This is going to give us unlimited cloud storage. How are we currently storing the body cam footage?
So we have a hybrid system right now. We've got a hard drive here at the Central Police Department. We have a hard drive out east. The reason for that, heaven forbid, the lightning strikes here, it burns the building down, we've got it saved there. But then past that, there is a small cloud that we have through Visiologics, but the transfer from here to there to up to the cloud is so slow, we're having a lot of problems with it.
And I guess, would there be some cost savings to that? Will we be able to kind of do away with these internal systems and stick with that?
Right, exactly. And not only that, the man hours that I put in, that our IT puts in, all that's going to be significantly cut down. We'll be able to get rid of both those hard drives. So it's just a lot of savings that is kind of hidden that you're bringing up.
Okay. And then help me understand, I guess the Taser is connected because they're the same brand with the camera. And so when you draw that, it's going to automatically start recording, and you're going to have that 30-second lead time there. On the holster, is there also, you're going to get an installation or some product that goes in there, and so when you draw, it's going to do the same thing?
Right, it's a modification. I guess the way they explained it to me, it's almost like 2 magnets, and that gun sits in between, and when you take that gun out, those magnets communicate, and they Bluetooth to the camera itself. So let's kick it on.
Excellent. That's it.
Ms. Jasper Lucas?
Sorry, he made me think of another question with the cloud storage. What's the security like for that data? I mean, I know that we obviously have to be very careful with any data, but this data getting in the wrong hands could be really bad. So I mean, I realize you guys already you recognize the need for multiple, storage places and facilities and things. Is their cloud storage secure? Do they kind of guarantee that?
Yeah, so Axon is another reason that they're the Cadillac in the field is on the back end of every body-worn camera, there's metadata that can, if you are a computer person and know what you're looking at, you can basically read a story from the metadata that tells whether or not any of that video has been altered and/or who has viewed it. Again, these are all way above my level of expertise, but Axon guarantees the security of any data that is put onto their servers. And I mean, I know around here Covington is using it. Covington's evidence intake has got to be just astronomical. A lot of the bigger cities, I know Cincinnati, if they're not using it now, I think they're going to it. It's a very, very secure system.
Does that benefit us at all if other departments are using the same? Because I know you said, like, if somebody draws their gun and so many people are within 30 feet, it automatically activates their cameras. Does that help in situations where we have multiple departments responding?
Yeah, so perfect example, Covington had those riots a couple years back, and we went down to assist them. There was probably 15 officers right in front of their police department, and there was tons of civilians around. If we all would have had Axon cameras and an officer would have pulled his gun or his taser, all of our cameras would have turned on at once. Another example, if an officer's on a traffic stop and we pulled up and his camera's on, ours is automatically turning on. So officers aren't having to think about, let me turn that camera on, it's coming on.
Mr. Dipper?
Are the cameras networked?
Explain a little more about what you mean by networked.
Well, just, I mean, I know that there's the mechanism to make them all come on at the same time is there, but can somebody watch footage from someone else's camera?
Right, so there's certain rules that we'll put into the software.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, a supervisor will be able to a sergeant will be able to look down to a corporal's camera footage and then a patrolman's camera footage. Mm-hmm. Or let's say somebody's in internal affairs and something's going on, nobody will be able to see that footage. It's all based upon the rules that you set in the software.
Okay. And the city sets those rules?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Vicki, you had one?
Somebody asked a question and it turned something on in my brain too. When you're talking about the Bluetooth automatically coming on, is there some kind of a backup or check? Like what scares me is what if the Bluetooth fails? You know what I'm saying? That could be disastrous.
Right.
Is there something on there that, like a little alarm or something that says Bluetooth's not connected? Like when I get in my car, if I don't have my phone with me, it'll say phone not connected.
Right. So,
I'm just wondering.
yeah, per our policy, every day before an officer starts their shift, they should be checking that camera. So that should hopefully catch that. Unfortunately, we haven't heard any horror stories, but that's our way of trying to catch that before it happens.
Rebecca?
Is there an override, like in the event that it doesn't deploy, and is there a way to manually turn it on?
Yes, ma'am. You
Okay.
just tap the button, it'll turn on. I haven't heard any horror stories, but knock on wood.
Okay, thank you very much, Sergeant Day. We'll place a municipal order on December for a vote, and you'll know for sure then, so we can enter into the agreement.
Thanks. Thanks for all
Thank
the
you.
questions. I appreciate it.
All right. Next on the agenda is the board appointments. These are the yearly board appointments that we need to make for the December council meeting. There's not a tremendous amount of changes. Let's see here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different municipal orders that'll be placed. The OKI, I'm just renewing my place on it. The BOA, the Board of Adjustments, we actually have 2 spots that are coming available, but it's the 2 positions that we just appointed. So Emily Sayers and Jeremy Armbruster, because they were filling the role of somebody else, those terms were expiring, so we just have to reappoint them, if that makes sense. Local Appeals Board, we asked Jim Viox, Mike Stubblefield, and Jim Brown if they wanted to keep being on there. They all three accepted, so we're just moving forward with that, if that's all right. Codes Enforcement Board, Gary Wilt and Denise Sterbling, we asked them if they were interested in just continuing, and they are interested. PDS is the only one that is a change, and it's not technically a change, it's kind of reverting back. As a lot of you may know, PDS went through a tremendous overhaul with the way the executive, the management board was created and the PDS council was created. And at the time, council member Hermes was on the management board with myself. So I am asking that I am the appointment and he is my alternate, kind of reverting back to the way it was a year ago. That is it. I think I think the Board of Health is January, right? Okay, all right. Are you still cool? Awesome, thank you. Ms. Jasper-Lucas?
Who are you replacing on PDS?
So Gary Meyer was the existing and Rebecca Reckers was the alternate. And Gary has requested to step down. He's ready for, I don't know if he anticipated the amount of time it was going to take for that management board, and he has done a phenomenal job ushering in some much needed changes that had started when the management board was separate from the PDS council.
How much time is involved with OKI?
Not a tremendous amount.
I was just asking because you're renewing yourself on OKI, and PDS, like you just said, takes up a lot of time. So are we required on PDS to make those two people, do they have to be council members or mayor?
They have to be elected officials.
Okay, I just wasn't sure about that. I thought it probably did, since obviously they already were, so, okay.
All right. Any other questions? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to Tree City USA program. Councilmember Hermes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. For about the last 2.5 months in the City Beautification Task Force, we've been talking about designating Erlanger as a Tree City USA. I'll hand it over to Mr. Glenn. He is the expert in it.
I hope so, anyway. We'll see. This is a very exciting time. So, like Tyson said, we've been talking about this as one of the big initiatives of the City Beautification Task Force, becoming a Tree City USA. And so what we're wanting to do is to bring this forward by ordinance to council for a vote, first reading, in the December meeting. And what will be part of that will be ordinance that contains the following. Everybody has this sheet of paper. And so what it is the National Arbor Day Foundation sets forth guidelines and 4 standards that each city needs to obtain to get a Tree City USA designation. And what I want to do is just briefly go over what those 4 standards are that we would have to meet. Standard 1 is to create a tree board or department, and what we'll be proposing will be an urban forest commission made up of 5 members that will have to meet on a frequent basis. They'll be appointed by the mayor and approved through council, and they'll have a term of 3 years, staggering so that way everybody's terms won't come due at the same time. And that'll be part of the ordinance as well. The standard 2 is a tree care ordinance, so also part of the same ordinance will be some general guidelines as far as tree maintenance is concerned. So as far as what type of plantings that we would recommend planting in this region, or specifically for the city, what are not to be planted, and then creating a long-term tree maintenance program. So what will be recommended in the ordinance will be like a 5-year plan that this tree board would have to assemble annually. The third standard is the spending, the fun part. So what they require is that any city would have to spend $2 per capita to qualify for Tree City USA. So Erlanger having a population just shy of 19,000, we would be required to spend $38,000 annually on urban forestry expenditures. What the great thing is about that is we're already spending much more than that typically. So when I ran the calculations this year, we'll be close to $50,000 in expenditures. And what kind of makes that up is mulching. So we can take credit for all of our contracted mulching that we do and in-house mulching, not only materials but labor as well. Any kind of tree watering that we do, and we do a little bit of that. Any kind of landscape beds efforts that we do with in-house crews, which we do a lot of that. We get credit for all that. Tree removals and prunings and things like that we have a line item in our budget for $10,000 alone just for tree removals. And just a couple of years ago, I think we had $30,000. So that kind of fluctuates a little bit, but it's still a pretty significant amount of money. So all told, we're already meeting and surpassing what the requirement is for the $2 per capita without even any funding for tree planting projects. So we're in very good shape, and so we're already doing what's necessary there. And then the last standard, which is standard 4, is we have to have a proclamation for Arbor Day and do an Arbor Day celebration. We've already kind of started the ball rolling. We're going to have a joint effort with the county and do a tree sapling giveaway on April 30th at Doe Run Lake. And so times that'll start and everything like that, we haven't decided. But it'll be on Saturday, April 30th. And hopefully we'll get a few hundred trees to pass out to anybody that wants to come up and get some. And then we'll also pass out some literature and stuff like that as far as proper tree planting and the importance of trees as well. So it's a great public education thing as well. So that's it for the 4 things that's needed to become a Tree City USA. And it's a great working for Florence. I ran their Urban Forest Commission for 15 years. They've been a Tree City for 30 years now. And planned and planted and maintained over $4 million worth of trees. So got more experience in trees than I ever thought I would, but I absolutely love it. It became a real passion. And I think it's something that could really, it really does change the city. When I sit there, and I did it tonight, looking down Dixie Highway, and I don't see a tree for as far as you can see. I think we could really make a great improvement in our city through urban forestry. There's 6 cities in northern Kentucky that are Tree City USA. Florence, of course, is one of them. Fort Thomas, Highland Heights, Cold Springs. Bear with me. And Park Hills. And, Highland Heights being just 2 years, going all the way up to Fort Thomas is now, I think, maybe in their 31st or 32nd year. So, and I'm sure that if we were to talk to them, they've made great strides, and they could talk about 30 years worth of maybe big projects, maybe small projects, but projects. And, some of those trees are now 30 years old and growing and, making a big difference. Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. All right. The last item on the agenda is the renaming of Rainbow Park. Mrs. Kyle?
Yes. All we want to do with this is we want to make sure that we do it legally, that if we need an ordinance or whatever, that we have that. But it's interesting, when this popped up a couple days later, I was driving down Garvey Avenue, and I sent the mayor some pictures of Billy Bradford Park on Garvey, and I thought that was so cool. And I made Joe pull over and I said, let me take some pictures of this because it's really creative. I mean, it's really nice the way they've got the sign. I don't know if that's the way we want to go or if people have other ideas, but, you know, I guess we need maybe a group of people that want to get together. But when is the park actually going to be, I know it's hard to say, updated to where we can do the dedication? Is there a timeline? I know with the weather, we can't really say exactly a date, but would it be in the spring or that when we're finished with Rainbow? Because I know we have lots of ideas in the works.
Okay, Rainbow Park for this budget year is just planning. So the master plan is completed, so we're taking those master plans to construction drawings. So, you know, the majority of the improvements won't be done in this budget year, but there are plans of taking down the fencing and putting up, you know, some new fencing around there to kind of freshen things up a little bit. And maybe we could do some signage or something like that and still get that done this budget year if we were to act quickly. But that's really for Rainbow Park, that's all that's slated for this year.
Okay, yeah, because I don't think we want to delay it a long, long time, but I don't know if everybody is familiar with the sign that I'm talking about, but it's really cool. What do you all think? I mean, is that a good idea, or? Okay, I'm seeing the heads shake. I just thought it was cool. It caught my attention, and they've got a cool gazebo there, too. I'm not saying that we need a gazebo, but I just thought it was cool. And it looks really, really nice, and I hadn't seen it before, so it's been there since May, and I just didn't happen to drive down that. But do we need legislation for this, Jack?
You know, maybe. It's probably best practice that we do a municipal order. I think it's most similar to probably a street sign or something, and if we want to have some permanency to it, it's probably best to have it done by a municipal order and have council vote on it. It's probably a better chance of it becoming a permanent part of the record that way.
Okay, that sounds good. So is there anything else we need to do or discuss, Mr.
Yeah,
Kramer?
I'll have the municipal order ready for December, and then we'll have council review it then and make a vote.
Sounds good.
And then from there, we'll meet with Peter, and we'll see what we can do this year, and we'll present to council here in the next couple months, you know, the things that we can do this year to memorialize Kathy, and we'll get back with you.
Tom?
So I want to thank you all for the consideration. I know the last time we discussed this, I couldn't express that, but I really appreciate it, my family and I think it's going to be a great honor to her, and thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention, Vicki. All right. Oh, Mr. Hermes?
I have one other thing to mention real quickly before we end the meeting. Something I would like to discuss real briefly now, and then more so at the next regular meeting, would be policies and some rubric for our task forces. I know, I think we all realized that there would be some growing pains that would go along with the transition from committee meetings to task forces and caucus meetings. And we really don't have any kind of policies in place for those task forces. So I'd like to work with Mr. Gatlin to start to come up with a municipal order to create some of those policies for our task forces.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Reckers?
I was actually working on something similarly, so I'd like to be included in that so that we can have a united policy and procedure going into the next year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Oh, Mrs. Kyle?
Different topic. A couple citizens approached me from Cherry Hill, and since we've been talking about our parks a lot, they said they would like to have a park. And I'm thinking, where are we going to put this? I don't know of any land over there that's suitable, but maybe somebody else does that's more familiar with that area. Because, I mean, they just want a park. They feel left out. And I thought since we're sprucing up our parks, maybe we could add a little space for them someplace. I don't know. Just a suggestion.
Mrs. Kyle, we're actually working on something pretty big. It's very early in the stages, but it would be located on the old Erlanger Road that was shut down. And we've kind of talked about, we're going to move forward with master planning this process. We've reached out to Corporex. They are like 100% on board with this idea. So we are moving forward with master planning it. And it will probably consist of a dog park and walking trails and some type of nature area and all kinds of trails that'll go through the woods that'll lead up to Circle Port and the showcase property, and a really nice trail system. So it's definitely in the works.
That's interesting because I know years ago when Bill Shire was the city administrator, he had talked about getting like trails, and that area is so rough, and I guess the cost was just prohibiting at that time. And you know, it's interesting, we talk about a tree board. Many years ago, we had a park board, and I don't know if we'd ever want to consider that or not. That might be something as we develop all this that you might want to have some citizens. You know, we had citizens, and then I think there were 2 council people on the board. And it was really interesting because they came up with a lot of creative ideas. But you know, it's just a thought.
It sounds kind of like our Parks Master Planning Task Force. Yeah. Those meetings can get pretty fun and creative. Yeah, so yes, it's in the works. It's very, very early stages, So we're working on it. Ms. Jasper Lucas.
Thank you. A couple of comments. I will echo what the mayor said about the Parks Task Force. It has been a lot of fun to be a part of that and see some things that, you know, I've wanted in Erlanger, like a dog park, to maybe come to fruition. So it's been kind of fun to talk about those things. One question I would ask about Cherry Hill, and I can't remember if Cherry Hill Swim Club is technically an Erlanger part. It's not. Okay. Nothing has kind of ever come of that land. And as far as I know, just still sitting there. But it's not in Erlanger, so there's nothing we can do with it. I didn't think it was. I thought that I remembered that was one of the reasons we hadn't done anything with it previously.
It's just across the line into the unincorporated Boone County. Mm-hmm. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Hermes?
I move we adjourn.
All right. Mrs. Reckers? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.